Hey guys, what's up? I'm going to review the latest video by Mike the Vegan. Somebody quit the vegan diet because her intestines were bleeding, and now Mike the Vegan is going to explain how she did it wrong, I guess.
Hey, it's Mike here, and today my response to YouTuber Megan Bowen, who recently quit her vegan diet after her doctor told her to for several reasons, including her IBS and eventually bleeding intestines. So we're going to discuss that.
So the doctor told me that I'm just gonna have to eat like animal products.
I'm just a mere MPH student YouTuber. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm just gonna not be giving advice. I'm just gonna be exploring various research things. And also I want to say, be nice. This person clearly wasn't doing very well, and they don't seem to be malicious. You know, they're not already selling some carnivore diet scam like some other ex-vegans who are quite malicious. So let's keep it chill and let's go. All right, first of all, I know a lot of you are definitely tired with my ex-vegan analysis videos, but then why are you watching the video? Tell me why you're watching the video, huh? Because you want to know how things go wrong, and hey, you guys voted for this.
Very
throughout
cringy.
4 options, and this one won.
I suffer from IBS. If you have IBS, you know that the bloating is it's just not cosmetic. It actually physically hurts, like to move. And you feel like you're getting like super bad, like cramps, even worse than period cramps.
And for those of you that aren't aware, IBS is irritable bowel syndrome, and it appears that she had it before she went vegan, so this isn't like an issue she developed when she was a vegan in particular. And we are going to go in depth in that on a bit, but moving on.
So I went back to the doctor.
It doesn't matter if you had it before you went vegan. Everybody who has IBS says that it gets worse when they go vegan, obviously, because they're eating so many anti-nutrients, toxins, fiber. So much of it is indigestible. Of course, it's going to irritate the gut.
They ran a whole bunch of tests and like checks and did like scans. She showed me the pictures, and I was actually like so shocked. But my intestines were actually bleeding all into my abdomen. The allergy and intolerance test came back, and then we found out, one, that I'm allergic to soy, which is why even though when I cut down on my fiber and I was eating all that high protein tofu, things just got worse, like really bad.
Though it wasn't crystal clear, it seems that this bleeding aspect was a direct result of the soy allergy, just for people in general to set the record.
Of course, she's not saying that. That's just one of the things that triggered it. People who have IBS stress their gut for many years with antibiotics, pesticides, other toxins, and in the end, they also get allergic to food, and then they react even more to it, and that's how they get to that point.
Straight. Soy does not equal vegan. It's not soyganism, which would be defined as, quote, seeking to include as much as is practical or possible soy products.
Of course, but a lot of products do have soy. And of course, because you can see I've reviewed so many vegan what I eat in a day videos, nobody eats a whole foods plant-based diet. Everybody eats some kind of junk, especially fake meats. And most of the stuff does have soy.
All day, every day. I'm sure some of you out there are actually soy vegans.
Soy yogurt.
I know a lot of soy-free
Incredibly
vegans.
common.
You know, soy is a popular popular source of vegan protein. You have that mycoprotein or mushroom protein corn product line that's out there. In addition to corn, you have quinoa.
And seitan and like mock meats and stuff, can't do beans, can't do tofu. What are you gonna eat?
She says she can't do seitan, which is wheat gluten, which is unfortunate, and I wonder what happens with that. But then there's also some obscure...
You wonder what happens with that. Where? What? In her intestines? I can tell you, gluten is pretty much indigestible. It only stresses the gut. And when you eat gluten for decades, as most people do nowadays, and it's found in every grain out there, contrary to popular belief, of course there's different kinds of it, but especially the one which most eat, and wheat, is gonna glue up your intestines to the point where you can't absorb any nutrients anymore. Your gut microbiome basically doesn't work anymore at that point.
Somewhat higher protein grains. Of course, you have amaranth, which is related to quinoa. But she says she can't do any mock meats, which I would be curious about because, again, things like corn, not as many people try them, but it's an obscure type of protein, like mycoprotein. It's not even plant protein, it's fungi. Like and subscribe!
But how is any of this relevant? Why promote veganism at all? There's only bad side effects when you go vegan. Your health gets worse, it destroys the environment, again, contrary to popular vegan belief. You're basically just saying, I'm in a religion, you gotta go vegan, and you gotta find a way around it. But you don't. She shouldn't eat fake meat at all, because all of it is gonna have some kind of side effects, whereas if you would eat your natural diet, and especially if you wouldn't cook your meat, then you would perfectly digest it. Everybody who has IBS and goes on a raw meat diet doesn't have issues anymore. After a while, of course, you gotta heal, but bleeding intestines? No way you're ever gonna get that on your natural diet. It's just impossible. But risking it and eating a vegan diet, risking eating all of this garbage is of course going to be a problem.
There it goes again. As for beans, I don't know about all legumes in general, but for beans, she appears to just completely cross them off the list. I just wonder, what about other legumes like lentils? And maybe some beans are worse than others? I don't know. But I just have to mention that...
Exactly, some beans are worse than others, but they are all terrible, especially for your gut. There's just no reason to eat them at all.
As this study says, legumes are the #1 dietary predictor of elderly survival. These are arguably the healthiest food group that we have, so...
I can't believe you just said that. Wow. Wow, that's really crazy. That's actual insanity. The most important food group which humans never ate in the history of humanity. Yeah, it makes total sense.
I feel like the goal should be to reintegrate this food group, if possible, through some type of treatment. We'll get to some of those solutions. I hate to be like, we'll talk...
But why? Why not mention how it's actually healthy for you? Any benefits, anything at all? It's literally just indigestible fiber for the most part, full of anti-nutrients. If lucky, you don't digest it and don't get to the anti-nutrients, because you're certainly not going to get to any actual micronutrients.
Talk about that later, we'll get to that, but we will. Anyway, the main contributor to IBS difficulties from beans was probably the oligosaccharides, and there are things you can do to lower these pretty considerably depending on the bean for soaking. Soaking white beans lowers the oligosaccharide content by about 30%.
But why would she do this? She shouldn't be vegan in the first place, so there's no need to soak and to reduce it. This guy is just not thinking straight. He's not thinking outside of his vegan box. If you gotta soak a food, cook it and whatnot, then you shouldn't eat it in the first place, because you should only eat food that you can eat in its raw state.
Or types of cooking. Pressure cooking lentils lowers them by about 36%. Would this put it below a threshold so that it wouldn't bother her as much?
Yeah, but at the same time, all of you vegans say that you should eat this stuff because of the protein, for example, which is a ridiculous claim. But then, if you do all of this stuff to remove whatever bothers the gut, then of course you're also going to destroy the micronutrients. You're going to destroy the protein structures.
I don't know. It also claims that canned beans lower these significantly, and I can't find any published data on that, but it's probably equivalent to soaking, because it's being soaked in a can. But what probably takes the cake here for lowering oligosaccharides in legumes would be sprouting, which is cute. Raffinose oligosaccharides of particular concern are, massively reduced after 2 days of sprouting, and basically entirely gone after several days. It's also worth mentioning that just soaking beans in the second study for black-eyed peas, for example, lowered them by 82%. After 2 days of soaking, it went down by 95%.
Everything went down by 95%. You were left with dead fiber in the end.
It's huge. And if you don't want to be like soaking and sprouting and all this stuff yourself, well, you can buy sprouted, dried legumes online, so you can just have them sent to you. And I find it very interesting because traditionally this is what a lot of cultures do, and there's probably a reason they do it. It's probably because a portion of their population...
Yeah, traditionally they soak and or sprout beans. Right. It's not as if they hunt and the women gather some stuff. That's also mostly animal foods, just smaller animals. No, they sprout the beans, of course, which don't even exist, which you can never find in nature. You could find 1 or 2 here and there, and they would be even more toxic than the cultivated ones. But of course, they were sprouting beans. Yeah.
Digestively benefited from it. There's other benefits as well. But this opens the door that through sprouting, she might be able to include a large variety of legumes and get that natural, healthy protein level back.
You can't even understand if he's delusional or just lying.
Yeah. But that wasn't her solution. She then started eating the typical eggs and seafood.
So I told her, I was like, okay, well, how about we try things like...
Eggs, seafood, part of our natural diet? Yeah, of course. Then your senses will tell you, I want something that's easy to digest, that's not gonna irritate my gut. It's just common sense.
eggs and bivalves, things like oysters. I'll have fish occasionally. It's a little bit difficult, especially if someone like me who always believe that there always must be a plant-based solution.
And she points to the oysters as an ecological thing. She says that they're better than other fish, but I'm surprised that more vegan, ex-vegan people, when they quit, don't go straight to oysters because they're probably lowest on the sentience chain as well. But no, they end up going straight to like large vertebrate fish that are pretty intelligent. But later in the video, she does eat salmon and she doesn't really have a nutritional excuse for this. So I don't know why she went vegan. I don't know if it was ethical. I don't know what's going on. I'm just calling it like I see it. And as for eggs,
the nutritional excuse to eat fish, salmon, would be because of the omega-3s, for example. It has every nutrient, literally, maybe some a bit lower than you would get from, obviously, from any organs that you would be eating. And the kind of salmon that people nowadays eat is usually farmed. The fat is pretty bad, quite toxic. I don't know what she eats there. And of course, it doesn't include any of the fish organs, which she should be consuming, but of course it's still better than any plant out there.
And now for fiber, because the doctor gave her a 35-gram limit, a cap on how much fiber she can eat in a day.
And especially if you have to keep under a low amount of fiber, which is something that the doctor told me. I have to eat under 35 grams of fiber a day or so.
And for me, I just couldn't take the recommendation of a single doctor as like the word of God. I would probably go straight to a plant-based vegan dietitian and see what they have to say about this. But yeah, that 35 grams is just a standard.
That's kind of contradicting. It is then as if you're going to your vegan god. If you go specifically to them, then at least go to other doctors also and get different views on it. And 35 grams sounds like way too much to me for IBS.
Standard doctor's recommendation if you have IBS. And as Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan, gotta love Ryan, he mentioned that of course there are different types of fiber, and to elaborate on that, we have insoluble fiber, which is things like cellulose, that plant structure, and then soluble fiber, fiber that digests in water. And for IBS, there appears to be quite a big difference. In fact, soluble fiber appears to help things out from this meta-analysis of like 14 studies. Quote, soluble fiber is effective in treating.
I know this study, and it doesn't actually explain how in any way the soluble fiber is supposed to be beneficial, or as it says, effective in treating IBS. And of course, because there couldn't possibly be an explanation for it, because it cannot in any way help. Fiber.
IBS. What? And it does seem like the types of food that she's talking about, she might be fine with soluble fiber and not so much with a lot of insoluble fiber. I mean, there's foods that she's eating that are more starchy, like potato.
That's quite possible, but it doesn't mean that it actually helps her. It's just not as bad.
So roots and tubers, as well as nuts and nut butters, which I believe she was eating in her video, have less insoluble fiber, a little bit more soluble fiber, and so those are good sources of food for her. Now we should get on the topic of protein, because I think this is the crux of it here. This is really what has forced her to quit. As you might know, the official RDA for women is 46 grams of protein a day. She's lifting weights, considering herself an athlete, and because of that, she has a goal of at least 110 grams of protein per day.
You know, what are you going to eat to get even all the calories that you need, let alone, you know, the protein?
It makes sense that you would feel sick after trying to slam down like maybe 40 or so grams of protein powder in a shake. Like, that's going to make anybody feel crappy. But if it's integrated into foods, it can be more naturally digested. Another solution there would just be to not slam a lot of protein powder down at once and just have like smaller shakes throughout the day that would be sort of digestively insignificant, but still get more protein in, just a thought. And finally, as Happy Healthy Vegan said, there's lentine, which is those water lentils, or duckweed protein, which has something called prohydrolase in it, which is supposed to help a lot with the digestive aspect of it. However,
I know that too. There's a study where it shows that it doesn't help at all. That's just marketing again. It's just selling something, especially to vegans. And the RDA for protein is very low. I'm glad that she eats more because she works out, but then if she works out, then she should eat even more, because you need protein to build bones, for example, and that's something that they won't tell you. This is why and women and men get brittle bones and whatnot when they get older, simply because they eat so much rice, so many vegetables, blah, 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 but not enough meat.
It is cultured in a medium that contains soy. That might be a microscopic amount of soy. It might be totally fine for her, or it might not. Worth exploring in my book. And just on the protein powder topic, like, I know it's not ideal. It's not my ideal solution either, but you can't really try and attack a vegan diet for this, especially in the athletic realm, when, as this study shows, over half of athletes take protein powder, and obviously they're not all vegan. Just had to throw that out there. What I feel like is really going on is that she's prescribing to the overconsumption of protein school of thought. She thinks she needs over 100 grams of protein, over twice the RDA for protein. And a lot of natty bodybuilders, vegan bodybuilders, are able to get quite large without even consuming protein powder. Obviously, they don't have the food restrictions, but just for the sake of argument, Robert Cheek, who I recently talked to, put 100 pounds on his frame without relying on protein powder. People like Derek Tresa.
I don't think that anybody would accuse these people of using protein powder, if you get what I mean.
He claims to not eat protein powder as well, and quite jacked. Haven't mentioned him in a while. But I can just say she's consuming too much protein, or thinks she needs too much protein, but we can look to the actual research on muscle protein synthesis, and this is where I think she definitely is eating way too much protein. The data show that there is a cap on the amount of protein that the body can utilize from a single meal in terms of muscle protein synthesis, turning that protein into muscles, utilizing it to build tissue, and that cap is around 20 to 25 grams. And
they have never measured how it is for people who eat raw meat and people who eat a lot of protein for long periods so that their bodies are already used to it.
This has also been described as 0.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which for, I don't know how much she weighs, a 130-pound woman would be about 18 grams of protein as the cap for what could be used from a single meal. Now, this is easily achievable even with some of her...
But what would the meal be, especially in a study scientifically? Certainly not our natural diet. It's just irrelevant to mention it because protein doesn't equal protein. It's not the same thing.
Restrictions with whole plant foods, and anything extra is sort of just extra work for your kidneys. You're going to be peeing it out unless you're on steroids. I'm sure you can use a little bit more than that. So to take a unique perspective on this, she's not being vegan so that she can pee out some extra protein. That sounds bad. As for the whole IBS thing, from seeing a lot of these cases of ex-vegans, I can't help but think that, you know, quitting a vegan diet and eating these things is just going to give her a temporary reprieve from IBS, as usually happens, and then people often just go down further rabbit holes of more extreme diets, sometimes to the carnivore diet, until they realize things are worse than they ever were, and then pretty soon they're drinking pee and sun gazing for 5 hours a day, and eventually you find them in a...
That's funny, but who does that when they go on a carnivore diet? That's literally a vegan thing. Why does he mention that and associate it? It doesn't make sense. Check out anybody who does any of those things. Drinking urine especially. On a carnivore diet? Really? Really?
An alleyway with nothing but a Slim Jim. And I can't help but thinking, because the timeline is unclear, that a lot of these more extreme IBS issues, or even previous IBS issues, were a result of her having some soy in her diet, if it really is a soy allergy issue, and creating more and more digestive issues as she ate more and more soy, trying to hit all of those protein needs until eventually her intestines were bleeding due to a severe allergy. Again, the timeline was unclear. I don't know what other diets she tried that were vegan.
That's a good point, but who knows what she was allergic to at that point when your gut is damaged that much? You probably react allergic to a lot of stuff, even if it necessarily wasn't a problem in the first place. At that point, you get a lot of autoimmune disorders where you can just react to anything, basically.
After finding out about the soy allergy, or if she just quit right then and there and decided to throw out all legumes because they had been bothering her. But fundamentally, to include things like legumes because they're so healthy, I think it should be a major goal. It would be a major goal of mine to be solving the IBS issues here. I mean, we're talking about not forcing yourself to eat foods that are going to be atherogenic and further the course of heart disease over a lifetime, because IBS, at the end of the day, is not the #1 killer. It is heart disease, and of course, eating more.
Yeah, okay, I've made a million videos about this, but why was the first recorded case of a heart attack, okay? Pretty much 100 years ago, give or take. How can it be if that's when we started eating a lot of garbage because of the world wars, more canned food, vegetable oils, which have been directly linked to heart disease? Over-the-top sugar consumption, way too many carbohydrates, especially processed carbohydrates, all of that started back then, yet before we ate lots of butter, dairy products in general, fish, all kinds of meat, blah blah, a lot of raw meat, way more than we do nowadays, and nobody had an issue. Lots of cholesterol, saturated fat, whatever the vegans blame, yet now most people eat a plant-based diet. Most people do. You can't argue that most people, especially in the West, eat 70 to 80% plants. A hamburger is 70 to 80% plants. French fries, basically vegan. If you would cook fries in lard as they used to do it before we had heart disease instead of vegetable oils, then of course we wouldn't have this issue nowadays. But atherosclerosis is inevitable if you do it.
Saturated fat and cholesterol from animal products is going to accelerate that. Which brings me to solutions. There are a few herbal solutions that are at least worth looking at that seem to be generally safe from the research. The first one I always mention is that coated peppermint oil, which has some pretty amazing results. I mean, we're talking about, from one double-blind placebo-controlled study, about 75% of patients in the treatment group showing a greater than 50% reduction in basal total IBS symptoms. That is huge. And from this review, another one that I haven't mentioned is artichoke leaf extract. We're seeing a couple studies with some pretty good results here. You can pause to read those. Finally,
I'm not gonna go over those now. To think that extracted toxins, which is literally what they are, would help you with IBS to heal your gut makes no sense at all. The studies that he posts usually don't actually explain how they are supposed to help. You're just supposed to religiously trust them, which is of course how veganism works, on blind belief.
you have curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, which may or may not help, but it could be promising.
May or may not.
Seems to help everything.
It will not.
Anyway, I don't want to dwell on it, but a quick word on what she eats now. You can see in the morning she's eating an omelet and some oats, and she says she usually just eats egg whites, but in this particular...
Even if the stuff would help in any way at all, and seems like marketing a little bit, why would she not eat her natural diet? Why would she eat beans and stuff and hope that it doesn't get as bad and use these herbal extracts when she could just eat her natural diet, digest her food perfectly, not always have to think, oh, now I gotta eat some beans, this and that to get all of the amino acids or the B vitamins and blah, blah, and take this supplement of B12 and let's hope that it somehow works. Oh, there's no sun, I gotta get vitamin D. Oh, I can't, it's an animal hormone. I can't eat animals, what do I do? Blah, blah, blah. It's just a lot of stress. Why not eat an egg, which has almost every nutrient, or why not eat any part of an animal which has literally every nutrient? You never have to think about it. Vegans always like to mention that this food or this food has this nutrient and it's so good, whereas you can just eat meat, and especially the organs, and you have an abundance of nutrients, and you have all of them. You never have to even say, oh, this is so special, because it already has everything.
Situation, and every few days she's eating those yolks of the eggs as well, which of course are pretty packed with cholesterol. And then she goes and just eats 5 oysters, which she even admits looks gross, but says is...
We create cholesterol ourselves. We make hormones out of cholesterol. It's an antioxidant. It heals the arteries. It prevents atherosclerosis because that's what fights the inflammation. There's so many benefits. It's good that she's eating the eggs, absolutely.
Good. Those do have cholesterol as well, and then she closes it out with a meal of things like salmon and potatoes. And she displays chronometer at the end.
But man, look at yourself. There's cholesterol everywhere. You're looking at cholesterol, basically. He doesn't get it.
And conveniently doesn't include like fat portions, so we can't see how much cholesterol and saturated fat she's eating, but I can guarantee you that it's higher than when she was vegan. And again, those are the main diet.
That's very good. She's gonna be a fertile, healthy woman, create a family. Good.
Contributors to heart disease. And it really is worth noting, she isn't going like some type of reducitarian where you're eating meat like every 1 or few days or eggs every few days. No, she's officially gone to eating animal products 3 meals a day. In the end, looking at something like this comment...
Don't listen to Mike the vegan. If something in veganism isn't working for you, especially when it's this bad, then you obviously should quit. If you're super attached to it, then just try some animal foods. She eats the oysters raw, I assume, so that's already a good thing. But generally, this is why I would recommend to people to try eating raw animal foods in the first place, and don't simply go back to eating the cooked foods, especially some well-done steak, and then you will think, oh, this doesn't taste good. It's how I remember meat. It was always so dry and blah, blah, blah. That's not how raw meat is, which is why this is so very important for vegans. If they want to try out some animal foods, also eggs, just drink some raw egg yolks to really feel how animal foods feel. Because if you would cut out all of the fiber, which she should be doing, but that's going to be hard to explain to her, then you would feel how incredibly perfect animal foods are for our digestion. You can eat a kilogram of meat and not even feel it in your gut. Tell me a plant that you can eat, or a vegetable especially, where you can eat a kilogram of it, try broccoli, and you're not going to feel it in your gut. Especially with IBS, is it possible? It's never going to be possible. And this is exactly one of the many, many ways how it's very easy to prove what our actual natural diet is. Thanks for watching, guys.